So you're thinking about becoming a musical conductor. Huh. That's pretty cool. It's definitely not as simple as just, waving a baton around.
Yeah.
We're talking about leading a whole orchestra, like from
Mm.
the very first note to that final dramatic chord. You sent over some really interesting resources, especially from RoleCatcher. Looks like they have some seriously detailed guidance on this career path. Ready to jump in.
Absolutely. Becoming a conductor is a really fascinating journey. I mean, you're shaping the music, inspiring the musicians, really creating a whole experience for everybody in the room. It's incredible.
Yeah, and from what I'm seeing, there's way more to it than meets the eye, right?
Yeah.
Those people just picture conductors during the performance itself, but what about all the stuff that happens behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that image of like the grand gesture during a performance. But really, a conductor's work starts way before they even get on stage. During rehearsals, they're almost like a sculptor, carefully shaping the orchestra's sound. Just try to imagine conveying all those subtle emotional shifts you get in a Mahler symphony, but you can only use your gestures to guide, over 100 different musicians? It's an incredible level of detail.
Wow, that's incredible. I've never thought about it like sculpting before, but that makes a lot of sense. You're really molding the music. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges early on, especially when it comes to the music itself?
Well, have you ever actually looked at a full orchestral score? I mean, some of those things look like some kind of crazy map covered in notes and symbols. And it's not even just reading the music, it's understanding what the composer was going for and then figuring out how to get that across with an entire orchestra.
It's like they're deciphering a secret code, and then they have to turn it into this whole emotional experience for the audience.
Exactly. And the communication isn't just about the technical parts of the music. Conductors use their whole body to get across emotions, rhythm, dynamics. It's almost like they become an instrument
Yeah,
themselves.
I've heard people describe it as the conductor dancing with the orchestra.
Yeah?
Is there any truth to that?
Huh. Well, there's definitely a very physical aspect to conducting. A great conductor will use their entire body to communicate. Like imagine trying to conduct something as intense and rhythmically complex as Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. You can't just stand there.
So it's more than just keeping time. You're really embodying the music and kind of drawing that energy out of the musicians. That has to be so demanding, physically and mentally.
It definitely takes stamina, that's for sure, both mental and physical. And that connection you build with the musicians is so important because even though a conductor is leading, they still have to inspire the orchestra, motivate them, and really collaborate with every single player to get that unified sound. It's a team effort.
Wow, a real partnership. Speaking of partnerships, I'm curious about all the different places where conductors work. Because it's not just those big concert halls, is it?
Oh, not at all. Don't get me wrong. Those grand concert halls are definitely a big part of it. But conductors are also essential in places like schools. They help nurture the next generation of musicians.
Yeah, I've always had so much respect for those conductors who can really inspire young musicians. What would you say makes a great conducting mentor? What are some of the qualities?
Well, a great conducting mentor isn't just skilled technically. They also have to have a real passion for sharing their love of music. They know how to break down complicated concepts so they make sense. They can give feedback that's actually helpful. And they know how to create an encouraging and supportive environment where students can find their own musical voices.
That's amazing. It sounds incredibly rewarding, but also pretty challenging. And with the way the music industry is always changing these days, conductors have to be ready to adapt to new trends and technologies too, right?
100%. Just think about the rise of video game soundtracks that use full orchestras. That's created so many awesome opportunities for conductors who are comfortable blending those classical and contemporary styles.
That's so cool. So we've gone from picturing a conductor in a tuxedo, leading a huge orchestra in some grand concert hall, to picturing them in a recording studio working on a video game soundtrack. It really shows how many different paths there are for a conductor these days.
And honestly, we're just scratching the surface. With all the digital tools out there today, the possibilities for conductors are constantly growing. It's a really exciting time.
This has already given me so much more perspective on what it really means to be a conductor today. But I have to imagine a career path like this probably comes with its own unique challenges as well as its rewards.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely not all, standing ovations and rave reviews, although those are definitely nice perks.
Well, with that said, let's take a look at those highs and lows. I'm definitely ready to dig a little deeper into what it's really like to have a career as a conductor. Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into some of the realities of what it's like to actually be a conductor. We've talked about all the artistry involved, how much the field has changed, but what's it really like to be on that career path?
Well, I think you could say it's kind of an emotional roller coaster, you know? On the one hand, you have those incredible highs, like when you really bring a piece of music to life, you can feel the orchestra's energy and you see how moved the audience is by the performance.
Yeah.
Those are moments you never forget.
Yeah, it's that connection, isn't it? And not just between, like, the conductor and the orchestra, but with everyone in the room. That shared experience.
You got it. But, and I hate to say it, there's the other side of things. The pressure, the crazy hours, constantly having to prove yourself in such a competitive field. It's not a career for someone who isn't up for a challenge.
Yeah, I bet those high-pressure situations can be a real test. Are there any stories that come to mind? Something that really shows what it takes?
Oh, absolutely. I remember hearing a story about this conductor right in the middle of a performance. His music stand just broke. The score starts sliding off, and he has like a second to decide what to do. He could have just stopped the orchestra, but he didn't. He smoothly tucks his baton under his arm, catches the falling score, and just keeps conducting like nothing happened.
Whoa. Now that's grace under pressure. You really have to be able to think on your feet in this job.
100%. Every performance is different. Every orchestra has its own, personality, and you never know what's going to happen. A conductor has to be able to adapt on the spot and change their approach depending on what's thrown their way.
It makes you wonder, are there other aspects of the job that aren't so glamorous? Things people might not even realize.
A lot of it is surprisingly detail-oriented. We have this image of conductors making these big, sweeping gestures, but there's also a ton of meticulous work involved. Like, balancing the orchestra's sound isn't just about everyone playing at the right volume. It's about understanding how the sound works in that specific space, the unique qualities of each instrument, even where the musicians are sitting on stage. All of that factors in.
Wow, so it's almost scientific. It sounds like you have to be both an artist and a technician at the same time.
That's a great way to put it. And honestly, that blend of artistry and technical skill, aspiring conductors need to be developing that from day one. It's a lifelong pursuit, always learning and refining your craft.
So where do you even start with that? What are some concrete steps that someone who's serious about this can take to become a conductor?
Well, everything starts with a strong musical foundation. You need a really good understanding of music theory, harmony, history. That's essential. And then comes the practical training, which usually means getting a bachelor's or master's degree in music with a focus on conducting.
So we're not talking about someone who just, tinkers around on the piano a bit. This is serious musical ability.
You got it. But it goes beyond degrees and qualifications. You absolutely have to get hands-on experience, joining a youth orchestra, assisting a more experienced conductor, even just forming your own small ensemble. Those are all such valuable learning experiences that you can't get in a classroom.
It's about diving in, right? Getting your hands dirty, making mistakes, and developing your own style through practice.
That's it, exactly. And that's where resources like RoleCatcher can be so helpful. They offer really specific guidance for conductors, connecting people with mentors and opportunities. They've got a lot of great resources.
Yeah, that kind of support can make a huge difference, especially in such a competitive field. Speaking of competition, what's the actual hiring process like for a conductor?
Honestly, it really depends on the orchestra, the level, all that, but I can tell you it's almost always extremely competitive. You're often looking at a multi-stage audition process. You start with submitting recordings, and then if you're lucky, it can lead to a live audition in front of the orchestra and a whole selection committee.
Oh man, talk about nerve-wracking. Those auditions must be intense.
They definitely can be. But at the same time, it's a chance for conductors to really show what they can do, their skill set, their musicality, that unique vision they bring to the table.
It's their time to shine. So, say you make it through the audition, you get the job. Then what? How does a conducting career usually progress?
Well, it's not always a clear path like climbing a ladder. There are actually a lot of different directions a conducting career can go in.
So it's not like a straight shot from being an assistant conductor to like leading the New York Philharmonic. Makes sense, but what are some of those branches on that career path?
Right. Well, you might start off with smaller groups, like a chamber orchestra, maybe a choir, then work your way up to bigger, more well-known organizations. Some conductors specialize too. Some are all about opera, some love ballet, and then you've got others who are really into contemporary music or even film scores. It's a pretty diverse field.
It's like any art form, really. You find that thing you connect with, work at it, get really good, and then create your own path.
Exactly. And through it all, it's that unique vision, that artistic voice that really makes a conductor stand out. It goes way beyond just being technically good. They have something to say through the music.
You're right. We keep coming back to that idea of artistic vision. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that? Like, what does it even mean for a conductor to have a distinct voice?
Well, it's all about those little choices, the details. It's how they shape a musical phrase, how they bring out certain things in the music. Think about how two conductors might approach, say, a Beethoven symphony. One conductor might really emphasize that big, heroic sound, while another one might focus more on the quiet, introspective parts. It's all Beethoven, but it hits you differently.
So even though they're working with the same music, the same notes on the page, two different conductors can create totally different experiences for the audience, just based on their own style, their own interpretation.
Exactly. It's almost like an actor playing a role, you know? They bring their own experiences, their emotions, their whole understanding of the world to that character.
Wow, that's a really great comparison. It makes you appreciate how much artistry is involved in conducting. It's not just, waving your arms around and keeping time. It's breathing life into the music, connecting with the audience on a deeper level.
That's what it's all about. And
Mm.
that connection, that's what makes this career path so incredibly rewarding, even with all the challenges. It's about sharing something you love with the world, inspiring people, making something truly special.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. This has been such a fascinating deep dive. I've learned so much. We've covered so much ground, from what it's actually like to be a conductor day to day to the artistic side, the emotional impact they can have. It's amazing.
The pleasure was all mine. It's always exciting to talk about music and share what I know.
And for everyone listening, remember that music is full of possibilities. So, whether you're dreaming of conducting a symphony one day or just exploring your own musical side, never be afraid to listen to that little voice inside you and see where it leads. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep the music playing.